For as long as anyone could remember, the horizon was nothing but a myth, a story passed down from one generation to the next. It was said to be an ancient warship, larger than anything humanity had ever seen, built by a forgotten civilization before the rise of modern technology. Some claimed it was powerful enough to change the course of any war, while others believed it had been lost to time, its existence a mere legend. In the far corners of the galaxy, whispers about the horizon could be heard. Some laughed at the idea of such an ancient ship still existing. A myth, they'd say. An old fairy tale made up by soldiers who had never seen real war. No one took the stories seriously. In fact, most of the world's military leaders treated them as a joke. The horizon was nothing but a piece of fiction. But for Commander Elias Kane, the horizon wasn't just a myth. He had seen it once, many years ago, during a mission far from Earth's borders. The warship had appeared in the darkest hour of the battle, its massive frame emerging from the shadows of space like some forgotten giant. And then, without warning, it had vanished as quickly as it came, leaving behind a sea of destroyed enemy ships and an entire crew left stunned and speechless. At that moment, Kane had known one thing. The horizon was real. But he also knew that the ship had disappeared, leaving no trace behind. There were no records, no transmissions, and no one alive who could explain where it had gone. The world had moved on, and the horizon became little more than a footnote in the history books. Years passed, and the myth faded into the background. Earth's military forces grew stronger, and new technologies emerged. Humans were no longer afraid of the old legends. They built massive fleets, perfected their weapons, and faced down the stars with pride. The myth of the horizon was forgotten. That is, until one fateful day. It began like any other. News reports on the holoscreens were filled with political dramas, trade deals, and the usual threats from various alien species. But then, without warning, Earth's defense systems detected an anomaly. Something large, unnaturally large, moving through the edge of the solar system. At first, military officials assumed it was just another alien scout ship probing Earth's defenses. But when the readings came back, they were wrong. This wasn't a scout ship. It wasn't even a ship at all. Not like anything Earth had ever encountered. The readings matched something impossible, something no human fleet could possibly have. The horizon. Kane had been watching the reports when the news broke. His hand shook as he gripped the edge of his desk, his heart pounding in his chest. He had heard the rumors, of course. Everyone had. But to see the reports come in with such certainty was something he had never expected. The horizon was out there, moving again, and its return could mean only one thing: war. The news spread quickly, first among military leaders, then to the general population. Some were excited, hopeful even. The warship has returned to save us, they said, certain that the mighty vessel could protect Earth from any threat. Others were more skeptical, shaking their heads and muttering about old superstitions. But Commander Kane knew better. He remembered the first time he had seen the horizon. He had thought it was a dream, a trick of the mind in the chaos of battle. But there was nothing imaginary about it. The horizon was real, and it was powerful. Military officials scrambled to confirm the ship's location, but they couldn't pinpoint it. The horizon had become something more than just a ship. It had become a ghost, slipping in and out of existence, moving faster than any known technology. It wasn't showing up on any radar, and it was impossible to track. It was clear now. The warship was no myth. Kane was called into the command center, where military leaders were already debating their next steps. Some wanted to search the galaxy, to send every available fleet to track down the horizon and understand its purpose. Others wanted to prepare Earth's defenses, just in case. But one thing was certain: no one was laughing anymore. The horizon had returned, and with it, the myth that had been laughed at for centuries would unleash its fury. Kane had a choice: sit back and let history take its course, or step into the unknown and risk everything. He knew that if the horizon was out there, something far worse was about to follow. Earth wasn't just going to be a bystander in this battle. It would have to fight for its survival. But the real question remained: what would the horizon do when it arrived? As Earth's military scrambled to prepare for the unknown, Commander Kane couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something. The horizon wasn't just an ordinary warship. It had a presence, an aura, almost as if it were something alive. Something ancient and powerful, with a history that went far beyond the records of the galaxy. Kane sat alone in his quarters, staring at the holographic map of the solar system in front of him. The horizon wasn't just a ship, it was a warning. Whatever the ship had been designed to do, it was coming back now. And it wasn't coming for peace. He couldn't explain it. There were no historical accounts of it having appeared on Earth's side in any battle. All reports painted the horizon as a tool of destruction, leaving nothing in its wake but ruin. What troubled Kane even more was the fact that nobody knew where it had gone all these years, or why it had vanished in the first place. Some said it was lost to time. Others claimed it had been abandoned, and some even believed it had simply disappeared into another dimension. Yet here it was, and its reappearance was no coincidence. Kane had been part of missions in the farthest reaches of space, yet he had never encountered anything like it. The horizon was like a legend that had come to life, a mythic force that could not be ignored. And as much as he wanted to focus on preparing for an incoming battle, there was something about the warship that kept drawing him in. Is it a friend or a foe? He muttered to himself, looking at the vast expanse of the map. His hand hovered over the comms controls. He could send out a fleet of ships to try to make contact, but what if the horizon didn't want to talk? What if it came for war, not diplomacy? Earth wasn't ready for what was about to come. Despite its advancements, the planet still relied on old tactics, traditional methods. It had never faced something like the horizon, and no one knew how to fight a war against a ghost ship that could vanish without a trace. The military had already begun positioning its fleets, but everyone knew it was a race against time. Meanwhile, on Earth's defense stations, war councils were being held. Generals, diplomats, and military strategists gathered around a giant holographic table. Maps of space flickered, showing every movement of the ships, and yet they still couldn't pinpoint the horizon. The ship had an uncanny ability to move without warning, slipping through the stars like a shadow. Kane was invited to the council, and as he entered the room, the eyes of the commanders turned toward him. They were all waiting for his advice. He had seen the horizon before, and they needed his insight more than ever. Kane had no answers, no clear strategy. The warship had always come and gone on its own terms, and there was no predicting what it would do next. He cleared his throat, speaking up. "We can't approach this like any other enemy. This ship isn't just a weapon. It's something more." His words hung heavy in the air. Everyone in the room knew he was right, though none dared to say it aloud. The horizon was something from the past, something that no one alive had fully understood. And now it had returned. A general slammed his fist down on the table, frustration written all over his face. If it's so damn powerful, why hasn't it made a move yet? Why hasn't it attacked? His voice echoed through the room. "We need to make a decision." Kane felt the weight of those words. The warship's silence was more terrifying than any attack. Was it studying them? Watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? "We don't know its intentions," Kane said quietly. "But it doesn't come without a purpose. We need to be prepared for anything." As the discussion grew more heated, Kane's mind raced. What did the horizon want? Was it truly a weapon of mass destruction, or was it something that had been misunderstood all these years? And more importantly, who had sent it? The ship's origins were a mystery, and no one knew where it came from or why it had been built. Had it been abandoned, or had someone deliberately hidden it away for a reason? The commander took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly as he reviewed the data once more. The horizon wasn't just a threat to Earth, it was a threat to the entire galaxy, something that could change everything. Its return was not something they could ignore. "Prepare for all scenarios," Kane finally ordered. "We'll monitor every move it makes, but if it comes for us, we will fight with everything we have." In the coming days, the Horizon's movements became more erratic. It seemed to be circling the solar system, slowly drawing closer to Earth. Every attempt to track it had failed. The ship was unstoppable, moving through space like it owned the stars. And yet, Earth remained in the dark. Why was it here? Why had it returned? The answers, Kane knew, would come soon enough. But the question remained, would Earth be ready when the warship finally struck? Days passed, and Earth's forces remained in high alert, anxiously watching as the Horizon continued its slow approach. Commander Kane, now part of a specially formed task force, was working nonstop. Every piece of information about the warship was being analyzed, every possible scenario considered. The fear of the unknown was palpable, but what really kept Kane up at night was one thought that haunted him. What if the Horizon had already decided Earth's fate? Earth wasn't the first to encounter the ship, of that Kane was certain. There were whispers, rumors, and data scattered across the galaxy that spoke of the Horizon's destruction on a scale that was incomprehensible. It had wiped out entire fleets, entire civilizations even, yet it had never left a trace. Once it showed up in battle, the destruction was inevitable. But still, the question lingered. Why now? Why return after so many years? Kane's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden calm from his fleet's control room. A technician's voice, shaking with nervous energy, broke through. "Commander, you need to see this. We've got an anomaly." Kane stood up immediately and rushed to the control room, where a large holographic display lit up the room. A detailed image of the solar system rotated in front of him, pinpointing the location of the Horizon. But this time, something was different. The warship wasn't moving in the erratic, unpredictable pattern it had been before. It had stopped. Completely. Kane frowned. "Has it turned off its engines?" he asked, his voice tense. The technician nodded. "Yes, sir. It's stationary, right outside Earth's orbit." A chill ran down Kane's spine. It was waiting. The room fell silent. Everyone in the control room exchanged nervous glances, trying to make sense of the situation. Why would the warship stop now? What was it waiting for? "Commander," the technician spoke up again. "There's more. We've been able to intercept a transmission. It's faint, but we think it's coming from the Horizon." Kane's heart skipped a beat. A transmission from the Horizon. That was unheard of. The warship had never been known to communicate, never even attempted to make contact with anyone. It was a force of nature, an unstoppable entity that only knew how to destroy. Without hesitation, Kane ordered a team of specialists to attempt to decode the transmission. Moments later, the control room was filled with the soft whir of computers and the tense sound of keyboards clicking. The countdown on the screen was ticking away, and Kane's mind raced with possibilities. What if the transmission was a trap? What if the Horizon was trying to lure them into a false sense of security? After what felt like an eternity, the decoded message flashed across the screen. "This is your warning. Prepare yourselves." The words were simple, direct, but they sent a shockwave of fear through the room. Kane's hands gripped the edge of the table as the realization settled in. This wasn't just a warship, it was a harbinger. The atmosphere in the control room grew thick with unease. Kane knew that the warship was preparing for something. It wasn't just sitting there, waiting for Earth to make the first move. No, it was provoking them, daring them to act. The galaxy had called it a myth for years, yet here it was, daring to prove its power. Kane turned to the commanding officer standing beside him. "It's testing us. It wants us to make the first move. And when we do, it'll strike." The officer nodded, his face grim. "Then we'll be ready." But would they be? On Earth's military bases, preparations were underway. Fleets were being readied, weapons calibrated. The Horizon's reappearance had changed everything. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting, and Earth was right at the center of it. As Kane's fleet set out for the Horizon's location, the questions only multiplied. Why had it reappeared? What was the message about? Was the Horizon simply testing Earth's strength, or was it something much darker? The final piece of the puzzle was still missing. Kane couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing into the warship's hands, but there was no way to back down now. As his fleet moved toward the Horizon, a growing sense of unease filled the air. What would they find when they reached it? There was only one way to know, and it was a dangerous gamble. The fleet approached the Horizon, its silhouette growing larger against the backdrop of deep space. The strange, ominous stillness of the warship left a feeling of dread in the hearts of the fleet's commanders. There was no sign of movement, no energy readings, no weaponry flashing to life. The Horizon simply floated, its massive hull reflecting the distant stars. It was almost as though it were waiting, watching, anticipating the next move. Commander Kane stood at the helm of the lead ship, his hands clenched tightly around the controls. He could feel the tension in the air, the heavy silence that filled the room. His thoughts were racing, as were the thoughts of every soldier and officer aboard his fleet. What would they find when they reached the warship? Was it truly as dangerous as the myths said? Or was there something deeper at play here, something more than just a powerful weapon? The fleet was within range now, and Kane could feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The Horizon had been a myth for so long, and yet here it was, real, tangible, and in full view. It was an unknown, something neither Earth nor any other civilization had ever faced. There was no playbook, no tactics that had been proven to work. "Prepare for contact." Kane's voice rang out over the comms. His command was firm, but the doubt was still there, lurking in the back of his mind. Suddenly, a soft beep from the control panel broke through the tension. "Commander, we're receiving another transmission from the Horizon," the technician reported. Kane's heart skipped. Another message so soon. He watched as the screen lit up, showing the words flashing in a cryptic pattern. "The time has come." It was short, simple, yet it carried a weight that made Kane's blood run cold. The words felt like a countdown, like the start of something inevitable. What had begun as a curiosity was now something far more dangerous, an encounter that would change everything. "What does it mean?" Kane muttered, his gaze fixed on the screen. Could it be a warning, a challenge, or perhaps a declaration of war? "Sir," another technician spoke up, breaking his train of thought, "we're getting strange readings from the Horizon. It's not just a ship. There's something else aboard it." Kane's attention snapped to the technician. "What do you mean, something else?" The technician hesitated, eyes wide with confusion. "It's hard to explain. The Horizon isn't just a warship. There are signatures of something inside it, something we can't identify. It's as if the ship itself is a part of something more." Kane's mind raced. Something more. That could mean anything. It could be a trap, a trick to lure them in. But then again, it could be an opportunity to learn more about the mysterious warship and the ancient forces behind it. He turned to his officers. "We need to make contact. If there's something aboard that ship, we have to know what it is. But we need to be careful. This warship has been the stuff of legends for a reason." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. They understood the gravity of the situation. The Horizon had remained hidden for centuries, only to appear now, when Earth was least prepared. This could very well be humanity's most defining moment, whether it ended in victory or destruction. "All ships, prepare for close-range approach," Kane commanded. "Stay on high alert. We don't know what's waiting for us." As the fleet closed in on the Horizon, a strange energy seemed to emanate from it. There was no visible power source, no signs of movement, yet the ship felt alive, its vast surface almost pulsing with an invisible force. The closer they got, the more the sense of danger grew. Something powerful was contained within the Horizon, something that Earth was not ready to face. Kane felt a shiver run down his spine as the final distance between them and the warship was close. His hand hovered over the command controls. This was it, the moment that could define the fate of Earth. They were about to board a ship whose power could wipe them out in an instant, a ship whose very presence had been enough to terrorize entire fleets. But if there was even the slightest chance to uncover its secrets, to understand the truth behind the myth, they had to take the risk. Initiating docking procedure, Kane ordered, his voice steady despite the uncertainty creeping into his thoughts. As his fleet prepared to dock with the horizon, a strange sensation filled the air. Kane could feel it too, the overwhelming feeling of being watched. It was as though the warship itself was aware of their presence, studying them, analyzing their every move. "We're in," the comm officer reported. "We've made contact with the horizon." For a moment, everything was silent. The fleet hovered there, waiting for a response, but there was no sign of movement from the horizon. It was as if time itself had stopped. Kane's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. Was this a trap? Then, without warning, the horizon's exterior began to shift. A massive hatch opened slowly, revealing a darkened interior. There was no sign of life, no welcoming party, just an eerie emptiness that seemed to stretch out before them. "Commander," one of the officers began, his voice tense. "What do we do now?" Kane took a deep breath. "We go in. We need to know what we're dealing with. Stay close. Watch your backs." As they entered the warship's interior, the crew felt the weight of history upon them. This wasn't just a battle. They were standing on the precipice of uncovering an ancient secret, something that had remained hidden for centuries. But would they find the answers they sought? Or would they unleash something even more terrifying than they could have ever imagined? As the crew ventured deeper into the warship's darkened halls, the atmosphere grew colder, more oppressive. The air was thick with a strange, electric hum, like the ship itself was alive, breathing with a power that felt ancient. Every step echoed in the silence, and the shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally long, as if they were being watched by unseen eyes. Commander Kane moved cautiously, his boots clicking softly against the metallic floor. His crew followed closely behind, weapons at the ready, but none could shake the feeling of unease that crept over them. There was something unsettling about the stillness of the ship. It felt like they were walking into the heart of a forgotten civilization, a place that had been abandoned for reasons no one could understand. "Keep your eyes open," Kane muttered under his breath. His mind was racing with questions. Why had this warship been hidden for so long? Who, or what, had left it to drift in the void of space? The myths spoke of its devastating power, but none had ever dared to approach it until now. And now, here they were, in its very core, facing whatever secrets it held. They turned a corner, and Kane's heart skipped. Before them was a massive chamber, its walls lined with strange symbols, glowing faintly in the dim light. The symbols were unlike anything seen before, a mix of geometric patterns and alien script. It was clear that whoever had built this warship, they had mastered technology far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. "What is this?" Lieutenant Harris whispered, her eyes scanning the walls in disbelief. Kane didn't respond immediately. His mind was focused on the symbols, trying to make sense of them. He had studied alien languages, but this was something entirely different. These markings didn't just convey information. They seemed to pulse with energy, as if they were alive, vibrating with a power that couldn't be explained. As they ventured further into the chamber, they came across a massive console at the center, its surface covered in more symbols and strange glowing lights. At first glance, it appeared to be inactive, but there was a hum, quiet, almost imperceptible, coming from within the console. "Is this some kind of control room?" Sergeant Nguyen asked, his voice filled with awe and suspicion. Kane nodded slowly, stepping forward. He could feel the power radiating from the console, a force that seemed to resonate with the very core of the ship. Something was waiting, something that had been dormant for centuries, and it felt like it was waking up now, at this very moment. "Let's see if we can get it working," Kane ordered. He motioned for his team to spread out and began to examine the console. The symbols on its surface seemed to shift and change as he ran his fingers over them, reacting to his touch in a way that made his pulse quicken. It was as if the ship recognized him, acknowledging his presence, and maybe even understanding his intentions. Suddenly, a low, rumbling sound filled the chamber. The walls seemed to shudder, and the lights dimmed further, casting everything in a deep shadow. The crew tensed, their fingers tightening around their weapons. "What's happening?" Harris demanded, her eyes wide with alarm. Kane's heart pounded in his chest as the rumbling intensified. The console in front of him flared to life, its lights blazing brightly. The symbols on its surface swirled and shifted, forming new patterns that were impossibly complex. It was as if the ship itself was communicating with them, trying to tell them something. Then a voice, a deep, resonant voice, boomed from the walls. It wasn't human, but it was unmistakably clear. "You have awakened me." The crew froze. The voice seemed to come from all around them, echoing through the chamber and reverberating in their bones. Kane's mouth went dry, and he could feel his heart race with fear and excitement. This was not a mere ship. This was something far more than they had ever imagined. "Who are you?" Kane demanded, his voice steady despite the dread rising inside him. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the voice spoke again, its tone filled with ancient power. "I am the Horizon. I am the last of my kind." Kane's mind reeled. The Horizon wasn't just a warship. It was a sentient being, something far beyond their understanding. The legends had been true, but they had only scratched the surface of the truth. The Horizon was not a machine. It was a living entity, a weapon of unimaginable power with its own will, its own purpose. "Why have you been hidden?" Kane asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. The Horizon's voice grew softer, almost mournful. "I was cast aside by those who once ruled the stars. My kind was deemed too dangerous, too powerful. But I was never meant to remain forgotten. You are the ones who will awaken my true purpose." Kane's mind raced. What was the true purpose of the Horizon? What had it been created for? And why had it been abandoned all those years ago? He could feel the weight of history pressing down on him, the burden of uncovering the truth. "What do you want from us?" Kane asked, his voice filled with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The Horizon's response was chilling. "You have awakened me. Now you must join me. Together, we will reignite the stars." Kane's pulse quickened. This was it, the moment that could change the fate of the galaxy. They had come to find a warship, and they had found something far more dangerous, something that could reshape the entire universe. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, realizing that this mission had just taken an unexpected turn. They were no longer dealing with just a weapon. They were dealing with a sentient force that was awakening, ready to reshape the cosmos in its image. And they had no idea what that meant for the future. The revelation of the Horizon's true nature sent a ripple of shock through the crew. They had come to uncover the mystery of the warship, to find a powerful relic of a forgotten age. But what they had found was something far more unsettling, an ancient, sentient weapon that had been cast aside, only to be awakened by their intrusion. Commander Kane's mind raced as he processed the Horizon's words. "Reignite the stars." He repeated under his breath, trying to make sense of the cryptic message. What did it mean? What was the ship's true purpose? And more importantly, why had it been hidden in the farthest reaches of space for so long? The crew stood frozen in place, their faces filled with a mix of awe and unease. The air in the chamber was thick with tension, and the low hum of the warship grew louder, vibrating through the bones of everyone present. The Horizon's power was undeniable, and its presence seemed to fill the very space around them, pushing against their will. "What do you want us to do?" Kane asked, his voice steady despite the rising fear. He had always been a man of action, but this was beyond anything he had ever encountered. The Horizon's response was immediate, and it resonated with a force that shook the walls. "You must take me to the stars." Commander. Together, we will bring forth the storm. We will unleash the fury of the forgotten age and reclaim what was lost. Kane's heart pounded in his chest. What the Horizon was suggesting was beyond comprehension. The warship was not just a weapon. It was a living force, capable of unimaginable destruction. The idea of using it to wage war on the galaxy, to reignite ancient conflicts, sent a chill down his spine. "We're not here to conquer," Kane said, his voice firm. "We're here to understand, to learn from you, not to use you as a tool for destruction." But the Horizon was undeterred. "You do not understand. I was not created to serve. I was created to lead, to restore balance to a galaxy that has forgotten its roots. You will see. Together, we will change the course of history." Kane's mind spun as the weight of the situation pressed down on him. He knew he couldn't let the Horizon fall into the wrong hands. If the ship's power was used recklessly, it could bring about a new era of war and chaos. But he also knew that they had to learn from it, to understand its true potential before it was too late. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Lieutenant Harris, her face pale, spoke up. "Commander, what if we can't control it? What if it's too powerful for us to handle?" Kane turned to face her, his eyes hardening with determination. "We'll control it," he said, though he wasn't sure if he believed his own words. "We have no choice. We've awakened it, and now we have to learn to live with it." The Horizon's voice echoed through the chamber once again, filled with a strange mixture of patience and urgency. "You will see. You will understand when the time comes, but you must be ready. The stars are waiting." Kane knew they had reached a critical juncture. The Horizon had made it clear that it wasn't going to be tamed or ignored. It had its own plans, its own vision for the galaxy, and the crew was now caught in the middle of it all. "What happens if we refuse?" Kane asked, his voice sharp with defiance. The Horizon's response was chilling. "Refusal is not an option. You are already part of my destiny. You will either help me or be swept aside. The choice is yours, Commander." Kane's eyes narrowed. There was no turning back now. He couldn't deny the power the Horizon held, and he couldn't ignore the threat it posed if left unchecked. But the thought of using such power in the wrong way, of unleashing a force that could destroy everything they had fought for, made his stomach twist in fear. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. "We will help you, Horizon. But we will do it on our terms. No more destruction, no more war. We will find a way to use your power to restore peace, not to bring more suffering." The Horizon's voice softened, almost approving. "So be it, Commander. You will lead us to the stars, and together we will forge a new future." With that, the chamber fell silent. The humming of the warship seemed to fade into the background, as if the ship was waiting, watching, ready to take the next step in its long-forgotten journey. The crew stood motionless, their hearts heavy with the burden of the decision they had just made. Kane looked out over the crew, their faces filled with uncertainty, but also a quiet resolve. They had crossed a line, one that would forever change the course of their lives and the future of the galaxy. But Kane knew one thing for certain. This was no longer just a mission to uncover the truth about a warship. This was the beginning of something far greater, something that would either save the galaxy or tear it apart. And there was no going back. The crew stood at the edge of a precipice, the weight of the decision they had made bearing down on them. Kane's mind raced as he stared out into the vastness of space. The Horizon, now fully awakened, hummed with life beside them, its presence looming like a shadow over their every move. They had chosen to align themselves with a force beyond their understanding, a warship whose power could alter the very fabric of the galaxy. Commander Kane gathered the crew in the war room, their faces reflecting the same mix of resolve and uncertainty he felt. He could see it in their eyes. Fear, yes, but also a glimmer of something else. Hope. It was the same hope that had led them to this moment, the hope that they could use the Horizon's power to bring about a new era, one of peace and prosperity. But as much as they hoped, The question still lingered in the air. Could they truly control the warship? Could they prevent it from becoming the unstoppable force of destruction it was meant to be? "We need to stay focused," Kane said, his voice steady, but carrying the weight of the burden they now bore. "Our mission has changed. We've awakened the horizon, and now we have to make sure it doesn't destroy everything we've worked for. We need to use its power wisely, or it will consume us all." Lieutenant Harris nodded, her brow furrowed with concern. "And how exactly do we do that, sir? The horizon's already shown it has its own agenda. How do we stop it from going rogue?" Kane looked at her, his expression firm but thoughtful. "We'll have to learn from it. The horizon is older than anything we've ever encountered, and it's not going to just obey orders like a normal ship. But we know it's sentient, and if we're careful, we can make it see reason. We can use its power for good, but we have to stay in control." The room fell silent, each crew member contemplating the gravity of their situation. They were no longer just explorers or soldiers. They were guardians of an ancient force, a force that could reshape the universe. And as much as they wanted to believe they could control it, the truth was they were walking a razor's edge. Suddenly, the ship's communication system crackled to life. The voice of the horizon filled the room, cold and commanding. "Commander Kane, the time has come. We are ready to fulfill our purpose. The stars await us." Kane's heart skipped a beat. The horizon was not waiting for permission. It was demanding action. "We're not ready yet," Kane responded, his voice rising with authority. "We need time to prepare. We can't just rush into this." The horizon's voice was unyielding. "Time is a luxury we no longer have. The galaxy is on the brink of chaos, and I am the only force capable of restoring order. You will take me to the stars, Commander, or you will be left behind." Kane clenched his fists, his mind racing. The horizon was a weapon, a powerful weapon. But it was also something else, a relic of an ancient age, one that had seen countless civilizations rise and fall. And now it had chosen them to carry its wrath. "We will go," Kane said, his voice now calm but resolute. "But we do it on our terms. No more destruction. No more war. We will bring peace, not chaos. You have to understand that." The horizon paused, as if considering his words. Then it spoke again, its tone softer, almost curious. "Very well, Commander. But remember, peace can only be achieved through strength. The galaxy will not bend willingly. You will need me to remind them of that." Kane nodded, accepting the truth of the horizon's words. The galaxy was a vast and turbulent place, and peace would not come easily. But it was a price he was willing to pay. They would face whatever came their way, together. The crew began to prepare for the journey ahead. Their mission had changed. They were no longer just soldiers. Now they were the keepers of a warship that could either save the galaxy or tear it apart. As the horizon powered up, its engines thrumming with power, Kane took one last look at the crew. They were ready. The future was uncertain, but together they would face whatever lay ahead. The stars called to them, and they would answer. The desperate SOS. The sun was setting over HFY, casting a golden glow across the lush green valleys. The Tsilians, gentle and peaceful beings with delicate features and shimmering blue skin, moved about their evening routines. They lived in harmony, never knowing war or violence. Their civilization was built on art, music, and peace. High above the planet, in the great communication tower, Technician Lumo was monitoring the space signals. It was usually a quiet job, just a few transmissions from neighboring planets, mostly greetings or trade agreements. But today, something was different. The screen in front of Lumo flashed red, a warning. Lumo's heart raced. He had never seen this alert before. His long, slender fingers danced across the controls, trying to understand the message. His eyes widened as he realized what it meant. An unidentified fleet was approaching Tylo 5 at high speed. "Chief Orin, you need to see this." Lumo's voice trembled as he called for his superior. Chief Orin hurried over, his robes flowing behind him. He was older, his hair silver and eyes wise, but even his face grew pale as he looked at the screen. The enemy ships were massive, dark, and countless in number. Their formation was perfect, like hunters closing in on prey. This can't be," Orin whispered. "We are a peaceful planet. Why would anyone attack us?" Lumo's voice shook. "Maybe they don't care. Maybe they just want to conquer." Orin's mind raced. Silo 5 had no military. Their ships were meant for exploration, not war. Their shields were weak, and their weapons were outdated. They were defenseless. Suddenly, the ground trembled. A loud boom echoed across the valleys. The sky turned dark as enemy ships broke through the atmosphere. Their cannons fired without mercy, destroying communication towers and energy plants. Fire and smoke spread across the capital city. The Xilians ran in panic, their peaceful lives shattered in an instant. Orin grabbed Lumo by the shoulder. "Send out an SOS. Call for help. Anyone who can hear us." Lumo's hands shook as he activated the distress signal. His voice cracked as he spoke into the communicator, his words echoing across the galaxy. "This is Silo 5. We are under attack. We have no weapons, no defenses. Please, someone, help us." The message repeated on a loop, broadcasting through space. It was a cry of pure desperation, a plea from a civilization that knew nothing of war. Orin looked up at the sky, his eyes filled with fear. "Will anyone answer?" he whispered. "Or are we truly alone?" Far beyond the Xilian star system, in the dark reaches of space, the SOS signal traveled faster than light. It passed by barren moons, ancient ruins, and distant stars. It moved through communication networks, picked up by satellites and sensors scattered across the galaxy. Finally, the signal reached a distant sector known as the Forbidden Zone. Here, massive ships floated in the darkness, their armor dark and covered in battle scars. These were no ordinary ships. They belonged to the Deathworlder fleet. Inside the command center of the largest ship, Commander Varys stood tall. His eyes were sharp, his posture rigid. He was a legend, a warrior from a race known as Deathworlders, feared by many, respected by all. A loud beep echoed through the room. One of the officers spoke, his voice firm. "Commander, we've received a distress signal. It's from Silo 5. They're under attack." Varys listened to the message, his expression unreadable. The Xilians were peaceful. They had never been a threat to anyone. They had no enemies. Yet someone was attacking them, knowing they couldn't fight back. A cold fury burned in Varys's eyes. "Only cowards attack the defenseless," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Prepare the fleet. We're moving out." The officers saluted, their movements precise. Alarms echoed through the massive ship as engines roared to life. Lights flickered as the Deathworlder fleet prepared for hyperspace jump. Back on Silo 5, Orin and Lumo watched helplessly as their cities burned. They could hear the screams of their people, the cruel laughter of the invaders echoing across the ruins. Orin closed his eyes, feeling hopeless. "No one is coming. No one," he whispered. But far away, in the darkness of space, the Deathworlder fleet moved with unmatched speed. Their ships were powerful, built for war, and commanded by warriors who knew no fear. They had heard the SOS, and they were coming. The skies over Silo 5 were dark with smoke. Fires raged across the capital city as enemy ships hovered above, their cannons raining destruction. The Xilians ran in every direction, their faces filled with fear and confusion. They had never known violence before today. In the great communication tower, Chief Orin and Technician Lumo watched helplessly. Their SOS signal continued to broadcast into the void, but no one had responded. Despair weighed heavy in Orin's heart. "Perhaps no one cares," he murmured. Suddenly, the sky above the city crackled with blue lightning. A deep rumble echoed across the land, powerful enough to shake the ground. Everyone, invaders and Cillians alike, looked up in shock. The clouds parted as giant warships emerged from hyperspace, their hulls gleaming with battle scars and ancient markings. These ships were unlike anything that Cillians had ever seen, massive, dark, and built for war. Their designs were brutal, covered in heavy armor and powerful weapons. They moved with purpose, forming a perfect battle formation above the city. Lumo's eyes widened. Chief Orin, those ships, they're not like the invaders. Orin's heart skipped a beat. There was only one race in the galaxy that used such warships. Deathworlders, he whispered, his voice trembling. The legends, they're real. The invaders, who had been celebrating their easy victory, froze in fear. Their leader, General Krax, stared at the new arrivals, his red eyes wide with shock. Impossible. The Deathworlders are just a myth, he shouted, his voice shaking. As if in response, a deep, commanding voice echoed through every communicator on the planet. It was cold, firm, and unyielding. This is Commander Varys of the Deathworlder fleet. You attacked the defenseless. Prepare to face judgment. A shiver ran through General Krax. He turned to his soldiers, his confidence shattered. All units, retreat. Get back to the ships. Now. But it was too late. The Deathworlder fleet moved with unmatched speed. Their cannons roared to life, firing beams of energy that sliced through the invaders' ships like paper. Explosions filled the sky as enemy vessels were destroyed one after another. The Cillians watched in awe and fear. They had heard legends of the Deathworlders, beings from a world so harsh, only the strongest survived, warriors who fought without mercy. Yet, here they were defending Silo 5. Orin's voice was a whisper. Why? Why would they help us? In the lead ship, Commander Varys stood tall, his eyes fixed on the battlefield. He watched as the invaders tried to flee, his face showing no mercy. Cowards who prey on the weak don't deserve mercy, he said coldly. All units, engage. The Deathworlders fighters deployed, swift and deadly, tearing through the enemy ranks. The invaders fired back, but their weapons were useless against the Deathworlders' advanced shields. Panic spread among them as they realized they were hopelessly outmatched. General Krax's flagship tried to escape, its engines roaring. But a beam of pure energy from Varys's ship struck it, destroying the engines. The massive ship spiraled down, crashing into the mountains with a fiery explosion. The battle was over. The invaders were defeated, their fleet reduced to ashes. The Deathworlder ships hovered above Silo 5, their presence powerful and unchallenged. Lumo looked at Orin, his eyes filled with awe. They saved us. The Deathworlders saved us. Orin was speechless. He had always thought Deathworlders were monsters, beings of pure destruction. But today, they had been heroes. Yet, a question lingered in his mind. Why did they respond to the SOS? What did they want in return? The fires on Silo 5 were slowly dying as the Deathworlder fleet maintained its position above the city. The massive ships floated in perfect formation, their shadows casting an ominous veil over the land. The Cillians watched in silent fear and awe, unsure whether to celebrate or hide. Inside the great communication tower, Chief Orin paced nervously. They saved us. But why? What do they want? His mind raced with stories he'd heard as a child, tales of Deathworlders who conquered entire worlds, who knew no mercy. Technician Lumo looked out the window, his eyes glued to the enormous ships. We should thank them. Right? He asked hesitantly. Orin shook his head. Or provoke them. No, we must be careful. But deep down, he knew they couldn't ignore their saviors. They had to face the beings who had answered their SOS. The ground trembled as a smaller ship descended from the lead vessel. Its design was sleek but terrifying, covered in dark armor that absorbed the light. It landed just outside the city's gates with a loud thud, its engines hissing like a beast breathing smoke. A ramp extended, and figures emerged. They walked with military precision, their movements calculated and powerful. Clad in dark suits with helmets that concealed their faces, they radiated authority and strength. The Xilian guards backed away, their hands shaking as they gripped their spears. No one dared to approach the newcomers. Orin took a deep breath, his heart pounding. "Stay here, Lumo. I must greet them, before they think we're ungrateful." His legs felt heavy as he walked toward the landing site. As he approached, one of the figures stepped forward. With a quick motion, they removed their helmet, revealing a face unlike any Orin had ever seen. Short hair, sharp eyes, and a scar running down one cheek. The being's gaze was cold, calculating. Orin's breath caught in his throat. A Deathworlder, a human. The human's voice was steady and firm. "I am Commander Varys, leader of the Deathworlder fleet. You sent a distress call." Orin's knees felt weak, but he forced himself to stand tall. "Ah yes, great commander. We were attacked, and you saved us. We are grateful." He struggled to find the right words, his mouth dry with fear. Varys studied him, his expression unreadable. "Your enemies were cowards, preying on the weak. We do not tolerate such dishonor." His words were sharp, carrying the weight of ancient laws. Orin dared to meet his eyes. "You came, even though you owe us nothing. Why?" A faint smile crossed Varys's lips. "We heard your cry. A call for help must be answered." His voice softened for a moment, almost human, but then his eyes hardened again. "But understand this, we are not here to be heroes. We have our own reasons." Orin swallowed nervously. "Oh, of course, Commander. We only wish to thank you, and to ask, what do you require from us in return?" Varys's eyes narrowed. "Payment is not why we came, but we will not leave until we are certain the threat is gone." His voice grew cold. "Tell me everything about your attackers." Orin shivered. There was no escape from those piercing eyes. He had no choice but to reveal everything he knew. "They are called the Rothans, pirates from the Outer Rim. They raid defenseless worlds, because no one stands against them." Varys's jaw tightened. "Pirates who prey on the weak. I despise such creatures." He turned to his soldiers. "Prepare for pursuit. We end this threat today." Orin's heart raced. You will fight them again." Varys looked at him, his gaze like cold steel. "We don't leave unfinished business. They attacked under our watch. They must answer for it." Orin felt a mixture of fear and admiration. These Deathworlders were ruthless, but they had a code, a sense of justice, even if harsh. Lumo approached cautiously, his voice trembling. "Chief Orin, they're not like the stories." Orin nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving Varys. "No, they're not monsters, but they are dangerous and powerful." Varys turned away, his soldiers following him back to the ship. Just before stepping inside, he looked over his shoulder. "We saved your world. But remember, mercy is not our nature. Do not give us a reason to change our minds." With that, the ramp closed, and the ship's engines roared to life. It ascended into the sky, returning to the fleet. Orin and Lumo stood in stunned silence, watching the dark ships hover above. They were safe, for now. But the presence of the Deathworlders was like a shadow over their world, a reminder of power beyond their understanding. High above HFY, the Deathworlder fleet moved with deadly precision. Their ships glided through space like shadows, silent and ominous. Inside the flagship, Commander Varys stood before a massive screen displaying the galaxy's map. Red dots blinked, marking the locations of the Rothan pirate ships. They scattered after the attack. Lieutenant Mira reported, her voice calm but focused. "Typical pirate tactics. They think they can hide in the Outer Rim." Varys's eyes narrowed. "They're cowards, but cowards are predictable." He turned to his crew, his voice commanding. "Track their warp signatures. I want every last one of them found." Mira's fingers danced over the control panel. Already on it, Commander. Their trail is faint but fresh. They didn't expect anyone to chase them this far. Varys's lips curled into a cold smile. No one escapes Deathworlder justice. Meanwhile, on Silo 5, Chief Orin watched the sky with unease. The massive fleet hovered like silent guardians, but he knew they weren't there to protect his people. They were hunters preparing for the kill. "What do you think they'll do to the Rothans?" Lumo asked, his voice filled with a mix of fear and curiosity. Orin shook his head. "I don't know, but I doubt mercy is in their nature." Back on the flagship, Varys examined the data on the screen. "They're hiding in the nebula fields. Clever, but not clever enough." He turned to his second-in-command. "Prepare the hunting squadron. We go after them now." Mira hesitated. "Commander, the nebula fields are unstable. Navigating them is dangerous, even for us." Varys's eyes were cold and unyielding. "Dangerous is what we do." Those pirates thought they could prey on the weak and hide from justice. They chose their fate the moment they attacked. Mira saluted. "Understood, Commander. The hunting squadron will be ready." Within moments, smaller ships detached from the main fleet, their engines roaring to life. They formed a tight formation, moving with deadly grace as they sped towards the nebula fields. Inside his fighter, Varys gripped the controls, his eyes locked on the swirling clouds ahead. They think the storm will protect them, but they have never faced hunters from a death world. The squadron entered the nebula fields, visibility dropping to almost zero. Lightning crackled through the clouds, illuminating the dark shadows of hidden asteroids. Mira's voice crackled over the comms. "Energy readings detected. They're hiding behind the largest cluster." Varys's eyes gleamed with anticipation. "Cowards, hiding in the shadows. Let's show them what real predators look like." The Deathworlder ships split into two groups, circling the asteroid cluster with military precision. The pirates never saw them coming. In a burst of speed, the Deathworlder fighters attacked. Blasts of energy shot through the nebula, piercing the pirate ships with deadly accuracy. One by one, the red dots on Varys's screen vanished, replaced by explosions of light. The pirates tried to flee, but the Deathworlders were faster, more skilled. "No mercy," Varys commanded, his voice cold and final. "Leave none standing." The battle was over in minutes. The Rothans were wiped out, their ships shattered and burning. The nebula fields became a graveyard, silent and cold. Varys surveyed the wreckage, his expression unreadable. Justice is served. But as he turned his ship back toward Silo 5, a dark thought crossed his mind. Why had the pirates targeted such a remote world? Who had sent them? His grip tightened on the controls. "Mira, find out who gave the order. This was no random raid." Mira's voice was steady. "Understood, Commander. I'll start the investigation immediately." Varys's eyes narrowed. Someone wanted the Cillians destroyed, and now they've made an enemy of the Deathworlders. The hunting squadron returned to the fleet, victorious but wary. The pirates were defeated, but the shadow of conspiracy lingered. As the fleet hovered above Silo 5, the Cillians watched with a mix of gratitude and fear. Their world was saved, but the presence of the Deathworlders was a chilling reminder that their safety came at a cost. Back on the flagship, Commander Varys stood in the war room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the aftermath of the battle. The nebula fields were now littered with the wreckage of pirate ships, a graveyard in space. But victory didn't bring him satisfaction, only questions. Why would a band of pirates attack a remote colony like Silo 5? Varys muttered, his eyes narrowing. There's no strategic value, unless someone wanted them destroyed. Lieutenant Mira approached, her face serious. "We recovered data from one of the pirate ships, sir. It's heavily encrypted, but we're working on it." Varys crossed his arms. "Good. I want answers. Someone orchestrated this, and I intend to find out who." In the communication hub, technicians worked frantically, their fingers flying over control panels as they decrypted the stolen data. The room buzzed with tension as lines of alien code filled the screens. After hours of work, a technician's face lit up. "Commander, we've got something." Varys and Mira hurried over. On the main screen, a message appeared, a transmission sent to the pirate leader. The sender's identity was hidden, but the words were clear. "Eliminate all Xilians. Leave no survivors. Payment upon confirmation." Varys's jaw tightened. A contract. Someone paid them to commit genocide. His eyes burned with fury. But who? Mira pointed at the screen. The transmission was routed through multiple relay stations, but the origin is traced to the Galactic Council's network. Varys's eyes widened in shock. "The Council. Are you certain?" Mira nodded, her voice steady. "Yes, sir. Whoever hired the pirates used Council resources to cover their tracks." The room fell silent as the weight of the revelation sank in. The Galactic Council, the governing body meant to protect peace, was involved in a plot to exterminate an entire species. Varys's voice was cold and deadly. Corruption at the highest level. They thought no one would notice if a small colony disappeared. They didn't expect the Xilians to send an SOS, or that we'd answer it. Mira's eyes narrowed. "What do we do now, Commander?" Varys turned to his crew, his voice filled with resolve. "We expose them. Whoever did this will pay for their crimes." Meanwhile, on Silo 5, Chief Orin stood before the village, addressing his people. "The Deathworlders destroyed the pirates, but I fear greater enemies are watching us." The Xilians murmured in fear, their eyes drifting to the sky where the Deathworlder fleet remained. Protectors or conquerors? Lumo looked up at Orin, his young eyes filled with curiosity. "Chief, will the Deathworlders stay with us?" Orin's face softened. "I don't know, child. But for now, we are safe." Back on the flagship, Varys assembled his officers. "The Council believes they're untouchable, hidden behind politics and power. But they've made one mistake." Mira's eyes gleamed. "They thought no one would investigate." Varys nodded. "They don't know who they're dealing with. We are Deathworlders. We hunt the monsters hiding in the shadows." He looked around the room, his gaze firm and determined. "Prepare the fleet. We're going to Council space, and we're bringing the truth with us." The officers saluted, their faces hard with determination. The fleet began to move, engines roaring to life as they set a course for the heart of galactic politics. But as they left Silo 5, shadowy figures watched from the darkness of space, their eyes cold and calculating. The Council's spies had seen everything. A secret transmission was sent to an unknown location. The message was brief but chilling. "The Deathworlders know. Eliminate them before they reach the Council." The Deathworlder fleet sped through hyperspace, engines blazing as they raced toward the Galactic Council's core world. On the flagship's bridge, Commander Varys stood firm, his gaze fixed on the swirling stars outside the viewport. "They think they're untouchable," Varys muttered, his voice cold. "But they've never faced Deathworlders." Lieutenant Mira approached, her face tense. "Commander, our sensors are picking up unusual energy signatures ahead. It could be an ambush." Varys's eyes narrowed. "They're expecting us. And they're getting desperate." He turned to his crew, his voice echoing through the bridge. "All hands, battle stations. Prepare for incoming hostiles." The fleet dropped out of hyperspace, emerging in the dark void of the Celestine expanse, a treacherous region of space where light itself seemed to bend and twist. And there, waiting in the shadows, was an armada. Countless warships, bearing the insignia of the Galactic Council, loomed before them. Their weapons were charged, engines humming with lethal energy. Mira's voice trembled. "It's a kill squad. They're here to erase us, and the truth." Varys's face hardened. "Cowards. They sent assassins instead of facing justice." He raised his fist. "They want to fight. We'll give them a war. The Council fleet opened fire, beams of energy and missiles shrieking across the void. Explosions rocked the Deathworlder ships as shields flared, struggling to absorb the powerful blasts. But the Deathworlders were ready. Their ships twisted and turned with deadly precision, dodging enemy fire with agility that defied physics. They retaliated with ferocity, their cannons roaring as they unleashed a storm of plasma and railgun shells. A Council cruiser exploded, its shattered hull spinning into the darkness. But more ships moved in, surrounding the Deathworlder fleet. Mira's eyes widened. They're trying to box us in. Varys grinned, his eyes gleaming with battle lust. Let them try. They have numbers, but we have Deathworlder fury. He opened a communication channel to the fleet. All units, initiate Omega maneuver. Hit them from all sides. The Deathworlder ships responded instantly, splitting into squadrons that weaved through enemy lines. They moved like predators, striking swiftly before vanishing into the shadows of the expanse. The Council warships struggled to keep up, their formation breaking as panic set in. One by one, they were picked off, their defenses crumbling under the relentless assault. But the battle was far from over. A massive dreadnought, the flagship of the Council fleet, emerged from the darkness. Its cannons glowed ominously, charging a devastating blast. Mira's face went pale. That's a planet-killer weapon. If they fire, we're finished. Varys's jaw tightened. Not today. He turned to his crew. Divert all power to forward shields. Prepare the Dragon's Breath. The Dragon's Breath, a prototype weapon, forbidden by galactic law for its destructive power. But Varys didn't care about laws made by cowards and traitors. The flagship's main cannon hummed, its energy building to a blinding light. Varys's voice was steady. Target their command center. Let's show them what Deathworlders are made of. With a roar, the Dragon's Breath fired, a beam of pure energy slicing through the void. It struck the dreadnought, punching through its shields and ripping through its hull. The Council flagship shuddered, its structure collapsing as explosions tore through its decks. In a blinding flash, the dreadnought disintegrated, its remains scattered across the expanse. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of debris floating in space. The remaining Council ships faltered, their morale shattered. They turned and fled, retreating into hyperspace. Mira released a breath she didn't realize she was holding. We won. Varys's face was grim. This was just a distraction. They wanted to delay us, buy time to cover their tracks. He turned to the navigation officer. Plot a course to the Council's core world. Maximum speed. Mira's eyes widened. We're still going. Varys's voice was firm. They sent an army to silence us. That means we're getting close to the truth, and I won't stop until I expose them. The crew cheered, their spirits renewed. The fleet moved once more, engines roaring, as they sped toward the heart of corruption. But as they left the Celestine expanse, unseen probes watched them from afar, transmitting their location to a hidden base. In the shadows of the galaxy, powerful figures conspired. A cold, calculating voice echoed in the darkness. They survived the ambush, but they won't reach the Council alive. Prepare the weapon. The Deathworlder fleet emerged from hyperspace, appearing above the Galactic Council's core world. The planet glittered below, covered in sprawling cities and towering spires, a symbol of the Council's power and arrogance. On the flagship's bridge, Commander Varys stood tall, his eyes blazing with determination. This is it, the heart of corruption, the source of all their lies. Lieutenant Mira's voice was tense. Commander, we're picking up a massive energy signature directly below us. Before Varys could respond, the planet's surface erupted. A colossal weapon emerged, its barrel glowing with an eerie light. It was ancient, built by civilizations long forgotten, and repurposed by the Council for one purpose: annihilation. Mira's face went pale. It's a planetary cannon. powerful enough to wipe out our entire fleet. Varys clenched his fists. They're going to fire. They'd rather destroy their own world than let the truth be revealed. A hologram flickered to life, revealing the face of Counselor Thelon, his expression cold and smug. You should have stayed silent, Deathworlder. Now you'll die with your secrets. Varys's eyes narrowed. Your reign ends today, Thelon. No more lies. No more fear. Thelon's laughter echoed through the bridge. You won't live to see it. Goodbye, Commander. The cannon fired, a beam of energy as bright as a star, shooting toward the Deathworlder fleet. It was unstoppable, powerful enough to obliterate anything in its path. Mira's voice was panicked. Commander, it's locked onto us. Varys's face hardened. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Engage reflective shields. The fleet scattered, engines blazing as they dodged the deadly beam. But the energy followed, bending and twisting as it chased them through space. Varys knew they couldn't outrun it. Prepare the dragon's breath. Target that cannon. Mira hesitated. But it's charging for another shot. If we miss. We won't, Varys interrupted. His voice was firm. We only get one chance. We end this now. The dragon's breath hummed, its energy building to a blinding light. The crew held their breath as Varys locked on to the cannon's core. He whispered, For all the worlds you've silenced, for every truth you buried. With a roar, the dragon's breath fired, a beam of pure destruction ripping through the void. It struck the planetary cannon, piercing its shields and slamming into its core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the cannon shuddered, its energy flickering wildly. The weapon overloaded, its power turning inward. Thelon's eyes widened in horror. No. The cannon exploded, a shockwave ripping through the atmosphere. The blast consumed the Council's capital, shattering their cities and toppling their towers. The planet's surface burned as the core destabilized, triggering a chain reaction. Varys watched as the world collapsed, its rulers destroyed by their own arrogance. He felt no pity, only justice. Mira's voice was quiet. It's over. The Council is gone. Varys nodded, his face grim. Their empire of lies has fallen. But the galaxy is still broken. It's up to us to rebuild it. He turned to his crew. Transmit everything to the galactic networks. The Council's crimes, their corruption, the truth. Mira's eyes sparkled. Their secrets, exposed to the whole galaxy. The crew cheered, their voices echoing through the ship. It was over. The war, the deception, the tyranny. It all ended here. As the Deathworlder fleet turned away from the shattered world, Varys looked at the stars. They thought they could silence us, but humanity's voice is louder than their lies. He knew the galaxy would change. A new era would rise from the ashes, one built on truth and freedom. And the Deathworlders would be there, guarding that future. Mira smiled. Where to now, Commander? Varys's eyes gleamed. Wherever darkness hides, we'll be there to bring the light. The main screen flickered, revealing the face of a human. His expression was calm, his eyes cold and calculating. His voice was steady, carrying an air of unshakable confidence. You should have left us alone. General Tar's fists clenched. You were supposed to be extinct. Weak. How can you be this powerful? The human's eyes narrowed. Weak? No. We are survivors. Our world tried to kill us every single day. We learned to adapt, to fight, to overcome fear itself. We are Deathworlders. And you woke the predators. Before they could respond, the transmission ended and alarms blared. The Deathworlder ships surrounded the Dominator, their weapons charging. Raise the shields. Fire all weapons, General Tor roared, desperation in his voice. Energy beams lashed out, but the Deathworlder ships moved with impossible speed, dodging every attack. They returned fire, their weapons striking with pinpoint accuracy. The Dominator's shields shattered like glass, and explosions rocked the ship. We can't stop them." Admiral Tylo cried out, his metallic body shaking. "They're too fast, too strong." The Deathworlders attacked without mercy, their ships tearing through the fleet like predators among helpless prey. Their tactics were flawless, their coordination perfect. They were not just warriors, they were hunters, masters of the art of war. Inside the ruins, Captain Varric lay on the cold floor, his body broken, his team wiped out. The Deathworlder leader stood over him, his face emotionless. "You came looking for monsters. You found us." Captain Varric's eyes filled with fear. "Why? Why are you doing this?" The Deathworlder's voice was cold as ice. "You wanted to know our secret. The truth is simple. We don't fear death. We are its children." With a swift motion, the Deathworlder ended it, his figure fading into the shadows. On the Dominator, General Tar watched helplessly as his fleet was annihilated. Ships exploded around him, their crews screaming as they were consumed by fire and destruction. We can't win," he whispered, his pride shattered. "They're unstoppable." The human's voice echoed through the ship's speakers, calm and merciless. "This is your end. You hunted us, thinking we were weak. But you never understood. Deathworlders don't run. We fight. We conquer." A final barrage of weapons struck the Dominator, tearing through its hull. The command center erupted in flames, consoles sparking and collapsing. General Tor's vision blurred as the ship broke apart around him. As the Dominator was consumed by fire, the Deathworlder fleet regrouped, their formation perfect, their power undeniable. They watched in silence as the last remnants of the Galactic Union's fleet were reduced to ashes. The leader of the Deathworlders stood on his bridge, his eyes cold and calculating. "Message to all surviving Union forces," he commanded. "Return to your worlds. Tell them what happened here. Tell them who we are. Tell them the Deathworlders rule the stars now." The message was sent, echoing through the galaxy. The Deathworlders' power was no longer a secret. Their wrath was unmatched, their dominance absolute. They were the ultimate predators, and the galaxy was their hunting ground.